Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Perfect. Just making sure that we're live on stage. Welcome to all of you to this new SketchUp webinar of this new quarter. Today, we will be talking about how SketchUp can also help the workflow from field to BIM. And we will deep dive and understand and learn a little bit more around two different tools of the SketchUp ecosystem, which are Scan Essentials, an extension that allows us to view and manipulate the point clouds directly inside our SketchUp viewport, and the Revit Importer, which is another extension that allows us to bring into SketchUp our Revit files. So we actually created this webinar because we listened to your question. In the previous webinar, many of you, they expressed interest around the use of point clouds in SketchUp. So we chose to custom tailor this webinar specifically for you. Also, another thing that I would like to announce is that this webinar, it's targeting intermediate/advanced users. So we will not cover all the basics of SketchUp, of modeling in SketchUp, but we'll go straight into these two specific advanced features. So if you would like to learn more around the general modeling procedures and workflows on SketchUp, I would recommend you to go to your, direct yourself to your resellers, which will be able to help you, or even go on YouTube and watch the many videos and tutorials that they're present online. Okay, before starting, while we wait for another few other people to join in, we'll go over the webinar rules. So this webinar, it is recorded, so we will be sharing the recording with all of you in the next days. Also, your microphones and cameras, they turn off. And we also disable the chat. So if you would like to add your questions and ask some question, you can do it in the Q&A section panel. So I forgot to say, there will be also at the end of this webinar a survey that it will help us to understand, hear better what you would like, your feedback, and what you would like to look, and so custom tailor even better the next webinars. And thank you so much again for joining. So in this webinar, as you can see, I am the presenter. I'm Francesca. I'm taking the place of Martin, my colleague. So I'm a partner success manager. I'm part of the Trimble team. And my role is the one of helping the resellers to be able to help you even better in using at the maximum the software of SketchUp and getting the best out of SketchUp. My role is therefore a partner success manager, but before I was working as an interior designer. So I'm myself as a first person, like I was using SketchUp a lot in my past job, using SketchUp to be able to communicate and to convey the project idea. So SketchUp was the pillar of my work. In this call, there will also be Stefan, my colleague. He will be in the backstage. He will be taking care of the Q&A section. So if you do not hesitate to put your questions, and we will try to answer to all of them. I will also answer to some of the questions at the end of the webinar if we have a little bit of time. So what's the agenda of today's session? First of all, we'll start talking around Scan Essentials. We will talk, we will make an introduction of what point clouds are and how they're used in a modeling software. Then we will also make a demo to understand in practice how we can use a point cloud in SketchUp, specifically for an interior renovation, but also for an exterior site survey. Then we will also talk about a case study of a company that uses in practice Scan Essential in their workflow. And then we will pass talking around the Revit Importer. We will understand what it is in general. We'll make a little demo to understand how it works in practice. And again, we'll talk around a case study of a company that uses the Revit Importer. So let's dive into it. What is a point cloud? For those of you that don't know what a point cloud is, as the word says, a point cloud is actually a cloud composed by millions of little tiny points. all these points, they do have an information of space. So they're set at an X, Y, and Z axis into the space. And they also have sometimes some color information. So point clouds are, in easy words, they're digital representation of the space. And they're captured by using different scanning instruments, for example, laser scanners, and also photogrammetry devices. A laser scanner is a machine that actually sends a laser beam to be able to detect the distance in between the machine and the actual object in the space, whereas photogrammetry devices uses the technique of taking a lot of different pictures from different angles of the space, and then by using those pictures, they're able to extract and therefore digitalize the space by creating, therefore, point clouds. So we've got different techniques. Using laser scanners is one of the most accurate way of being able to capture point clouds. In Trimble, we do have different models of laser machines. For example, the Trimble X9 or X7. Those scanners, they can reach up to 150 meters of distance, and they can have an accuracy to the millimeters within the 30 meters. So they're super advanced machine that they allow to have very accurate scans of the space. But if you don't have but if you can afford this like high-end technology, the good news is that nowadays point clouds are becoming more and more accessible as well as affordable, because we can also create point clouds using the LiDAR technology. The LiDAR technology, it's another type of technology that we can find inside the camera of, for example, the iPhone Pros and the iPad Pros, and that allows to create those point clouds by understanding how the light bounces off the surfaces of objects in the space. So that means that just by using an iPhone Pro or an iPad Pro, you can also detect these point clouds, and therefore this is a much more handy, practical way of making point clouds. It's much easier to transport a little iPad, and using point clouds is so much safer to be able to create this to capture the site, and therefore using a point cloud is the usage of point cloud is becoming more and more accessible, and using for different purposes and situations. Of course, using an iPad, as we can see in the video on the right, it's a good practice for smaller projects, and especially for interiors. So now let's jump right into our demo. The first demo we will talk about this project is an example of project of renovation for an interior countryside house. We will use this existing point cloud that has exterior and interior, and we will understand how to use it in practice. I'll jump right into it. Here you go. I will get the model. Here you go. We are in SketchUp. First thing, we need to open our extension of Scan Essentials. Scan Essentials, as I mentioned before, is our extension that helps us to handle, to use the point cloud, and to be able to model using this point cloud. This is an extension that we can use only on Windows machines, so it's not available on Apple yet. So to be able to take our Scan Essential, we can just make a right click on our menu bars, look for our Trimble Scan Essential bar, and here you go, it is open. I can just put it here to be a little bit more practical. So in this menu bar, we will have all the specific tools that will help us to use the point clouds. First of all, we need to open a point cloud. We can use the file open. We just click on this file. We look for the actual point cloud that we would like to import, for example, this one. And here we can see that we are capable of importing many different point cloud formats. For example, the PLY, the LAS, the E57, and the RWP, which are the Trimble Real Work point cloud. So I will take this one and open directly into my viewport. We also have the option to choose if you want to align this point cloud with the central point of the axis of my model, or if you want to just to keep the original point of my point cloud. In this case, I will say yes. This is completely up to us to choose how to import our point cloud according to our method of modeling. So in a few seconds, we've seen that SketchUp is actually importing my point cloud. It's important to understand that SketchUp, it has created an actual external link in between my SketchUp file and the point cloud. That means that my SketchUp file will not be much heavier. And the fact that it is an external link, it will allow me to navigate in such a fluid and smooth way around the point cloud and also my future model. So that means that using Scan Essential, we can actually upload point clouds that they're very big, because SketchUp and Scan Essential, they are capable of reading very, very big point clouds. Okay, so as we can see, we've got this big point cloud, we've got a lot of distractions, for example, all these points around, and we would like to tidy up and clean this point cloud. How to do so? We've got different ways. One of the way is using the clipping boxes. This is a functionality that is specific to Scan Essential. We find it over here. When we select it, we can actually now draw a 2D rectangle. This 2D rectangle will actually isolate whatever is contained, all the points that are contained within the rectangle, and will hide everything else that is around. So in this case, I will set myself on top of my model. I will zoom a little bit. I will draw my rectangle as so. And here you go. My clipping box has hidden everything else that was around. So now visualizing my subject is much easier. To be able to hide this clipping box, it is possible by using this deactivate clipping box function. And if you want to find this clipping box and all the others that I previously created, we can also do it by opening the Point Cloud Manager, which is this window. We can actually scroll down to the section of clipping boxes, as we can see here. And here go all the different clipping boxes that have been created, such as this one. And here we can even delete the one that we don't need anymore. Okay, second method to be able to organize my point cloud would be the one of using section cuts. So this is a functionality is native in SketchUp. That's why we don't find it into our Scan Essential palette, but we find it here. We can create section cuts to our geometry, as we can see. And as we can see, this tool also works for the section for sectioning our point cloud. Here you go, just with a click, we can see that now I have the section cut on my point cloud. And if I move my section cut, we can see that inside we've also got data of the interior of my house. That's because the technician has actually taken point clouds also of each interior of my house by setting the Trimble scanner. So this is a very handy way to be able to visualize in a clear way my data. Other important functionality that we also find in a Point Cloud Manager is the ability to highlight only the points that intersect my point cloud, so that we can actually create a sort of 2D plan extracted directly from a point cloud. To do that, we can just scroll down and go into the section option, and we can activate this display section box. What this will do will actually, as I said, visualize only the points that will intersect my section cut, which means that this could be a very handy way to be able to retrace the existing plan of my structure, starting from a point cloud, a 2D point cloud. So if I go in my next scene, we can see that here I created a section cut, horizontal, and that actually corresponds to the second floor of my house. And this is the plan that I can retrace. Of course, we can also mix and match clipping boxes as section cuts. For example, in this case, if I activate this clipping box, we can see that I will visualize only the plan and of the specific area. So starting from this 2D point cloud plan, as I said, I can retrace it by using my native modeling tools of SketchUp. For example, I'm using the tool of rectangle. I can actually retrace everything. As we can see, I can use the points of my point cloud to be able to guide me through this modeling. Of course, here I'm going a little bit fast for the sake of this demonstration, but you can be much more precise if you wish to. And here you go. I'm gonna just correct a little bit of mistake, remove these little lines. And here you go, in a few seconds, that I've got the base of the plan of my existing structure. So now if I hide my point cloud and also I hide my sections, here you go. Now I can actually start to use the tool push-pull to be able to extrude and therefore create volume for my walls. Here you go. This actually shows us how quick and easy it is to use a point cloud to start to create, to reproduce the creation of the existing. So if we keep using this technique, we will arrive to have something that looks a little bit like this. I just prepared it in this next scene. And here you go. Here I actually modeled the interior walls, the exterior walls. Of course, I organize all my model in groups and components, things that we will not have time to talk about in this webinar, but you can see that my model starts to be, it is organized. I also started to apply textures, and we start to actually have our site as existing. Other important thing of using this technique of visualizing only the points that intersect my section cut is the fact that I can use this as a way of verifying that whatever I actually built and whatever I model, it does correspond to the reality. So if I move, if I slide down this section cut, we can see that the point cloud that we visualize, it moves alongside with the section cut. And so, for example, we can make sure that in the case of this window, everything corresponds. We can understand where the window starts. So we can actually use this way to even understand information about the heights. And of course, this technique can be used as well for the elevations, the vertical section cuts, to make sure, for example, that this vaulted ceiling and the ground floor, it actually corresponds to reality. We can see that here there's quite a lot of discrepancy, so I will have to modify my model. Or even, for example, all these elements of structure for my beams of the roof. Here you go. So very handy ways to be able to handle our model and utilizing the point cloud to be able to model. So I will continue my modeling, of course, once that I have all the structure constructor as existing. I can actually use the SketchUp model to continue the development of my renovation of my interior design. So in this case, I'm actually using this plan to be able to create an actual plan, a technical drawing, a plan. We can see this is always my SketchUp model, but I just use some styles. I changed the thickness of some lines to be able to visualize in an orthogonal perspective this plan. And this plan was used as a base to be able to create some sketches and to analyze the flaws of my interior design. And so the interior designer actually drafted a few interior ideas. These sketches have been done on SketchUp for iPad by using the functionality of annotation that allows us to use the Apple Pen to be able to sketch over directly on top of my SketchUp viewport. If I move my scene around, we can see that all the sketches, they're a sort of watermark overlapped on top of my viewport. They don't move, but they're saved inside my scenes. And this is a very handy feature, especially for architecture and interior design, to be able to take notes, draft ideas, and contain all the information directly inside of my SketchUp without having to use external notes, external paper, but having all the information in one source, which is my SketchUp model. So starting from this, of course, the designer can continue the developing of the model by adding all these elements, furniture, decorative elements, and in this case, of course, using the 3D warehouse. For those of you that don't know what the 3D warehouse is, the 3D warehouse is actually a very big library on the internet. Is actually the biggest library of pre-model objects present in the world. And we can use it in SketchUp by simply clicking the 3D warehouse button that will open up this pop-up view that uses internet, where we can find any sort of element and model possible. So furniture, elements, etc., etc. And we can download them straight away into our model. And we can see that we can actually advance very quickly in our modeling. And this is one of the value of SketchUp. It allows us to model very fast without even having to model all the details from scratch, as we can leverage the 3D warehouse. Okay, so we continue our modeling. We create the bedroom, the entrance, and we can see that we can even use the viewport of SketchUp to be able to have a walk through our interior space to communicate with all the stakeholders, but even with the clients. And in order to visualize even more in depth the result of our design, we could even leverage the artificial intelligence, which is AI render on SketchUp. So this is a functionality that allows us to create visuals that they look like this. So starting from this viewport, I actually prompted and I added the fact that I wanted to add artificial lights, like a strip LED light around the mirror, and that this is a mirror, and I managed to create something like that and saved it inside my SketchUp as an image. But of course, I can download those images. So we do have also AI that can help even further to better visualize our interior spaces and the idea of our concepts. So we've got the kitchen, the living room, and again, some other views of the AI. So we can see that we can infuse information about material, but we can even use the AI, for example, to brainstorm new ideas. For example, I prompted in this case to change the interior and to create a different style, a more like modern and minimal. And here go the AI that gives me different ideas that can help the designer itself to seek different ideas. And why not? Even more creative ideas if there's someone that is a whiskey lover. Okay, so now that we've seen how we can actually leverage a point cloud to create the existing for, in the case of the renovation of the interior space, now we can even see how we can leverage point clouds to be able to create the exterior and even the side, the terrain, etc. So let's move on to this other demo. Here you go. This is another project. Let's say that we are an architect and we do have this point cloud, and we would like to create an extension, a sort of like annex building just aside, but we would also like to create visualization of this building to communicate to the clients and the different stakeholders how the final result is going to be. So even before starting the modeling of the external and the new construction, we need to create model and create the site. So first of all, we can model the external volume of this building. We can see that this point cloud is only of the exterior, and all we need to do, we can use the points of this point cloud just to create the volumes and have therefore my base building. So all these different points of my point cloud, as we can see, and as we saw a little bit before, they become snap points for my modelization. So starting with these points, I can use any internal modeling tool to be able to develop my model. We can also handle these points and adjust them according to what I need to do. For example, we can change the size of my point. We can make them a little bit bigger. And as we can see, our point cloud will start to turn into a little bit more as a picture-like. or I can make them very thin. This is completely up to us. And this is a very handy feature that will help us to model, to speed up our modeling and customize our modeling. So in this case, I make sure that my point cloud is actually aligned with the axis to facilitate my modeling. Or if it's not aligned with the axis, I can even rotate my point cloud by using this feature, which is called rotate point cloud. And this is going to actually make sure that my modeling will be more streamlined. I select a surface, an easy one to start my modeling. For example, this wall, which is quite free and empty. I use my modeling tool, so for example, the rectangle tool, and I can start to actually create my first rectangle of my first wall as so. We can see that I snap myself to the axis to be able to create this rectangle so that all the rest of my modeling will be clean. Starting from the surface, I can actually start to push-pull to create volumes. I continue push-pulling, and we can see that I'm using the points of my point cloud as a reference to guide, therefore, my modeling. So I use them, all these points, as I said, as a snap point. We see that here, there's actually my building goes outwards. So I will push-pull a little bit more. Same here. And we can do the same even for the height. Again, I push-pull and I use the point cloud as reference to block, therefore, my modeling. I can erase this line. And now we see that here, actually, there's a sort of balcony. So I will need to create a line. I snap myself on the red axis to be able to draw a perpendicular line. And then I actually push-pull to create even this part. Okay, so we can see how quick and easy it is to actually start to draw the volumes, the general volumes of my existing building. But you may be thinking, okay, but while you were building, actually, your modeling wasn't really accurate. We can see that there are some discrepancies here. For example, for the first surface, how to make sure that my model is actually very accurate. And SketchUp actually helps us to do that. With Scan Essential in the Point Cloud Manager, we have a functionality that is called inspection. And if we click this functionality, this button of inspection map, this is the functionality that helps us to see where there are discrepancies in between my point cloud and my geometry, and where the geometry is actually very accurate. So the green will tell me that geometry corresponds accurately to my point cloud, and the red tells me that there's a little bit more discrepancy. So we need to fix it. So this is very easy. We just keep selecting our surfaces using the push-pull, and we can see that we can actually move our surfaces up to reaching the point where they're actually very accurate. So this is very easy and quick, and we make sure that the model is accurate to the millimeters. Okay, we can see here that, for example, there are some different features. Like for the windows, they're a little bit inwards. Therefore, I can actually just simply draw on top of my surface a rectangle and then push-pull it to be able to create this feature. Here go another second rectangle, and I can push-pull it to adjust it. So I will not do all the building, of course, for the sake of this demo, but I'm just giving you an idea of how to use point clouds and how to model with point clouds. To deactivate the inspection map is very easy. We just have to double-click on the inspection map tool, and here you go, the visualization of my original point cloud. Okay, so now I can actually group it, and I can move on and go onto the section of modeling my terrain. So once we model our building, it would be nice also to have a mesh of my terrain. But using the native SketchUp modeling tools, it would be too complex because, of course, a terrain is very organic. And that's why Scan Essentials, it gives us specifically a tool that is specific to do this type of tasks. This tool is called Create Ground Mesh. And when I activate it, it opens up this window. I can choose the type of perimeter of my ground mesh. I can fit it to the point cloud. Or, for example, I can choose it to have rectangular. In this case, I will use a rectangular one because I've got quite a clean point cloud. I can even choose the mesh cell size, which will actually give me the size of the actual little square in the mesh that I will create. In this case, I want to make it a little bit more detailed, so I will make sure that my mesh cell size is of 0.5 meter. Once I'm ready, I can hit Create Mesh, and we will see that in a few seconds, SketchUp very quickly will create this ground mesh for me. And here you go. If we hide the point cloud, we can see that this is a ground mesh, which is grouped in a group. So I can access, and this is all SketchUp geometry. And this corresponds 100% to the information that was given by my point cloud. In case I need to have a little bit more detail on some specific area, I can still do that just by entering into this geometry, selecting the area where I would like to add more information, and use the tool Add Detail. By hitting on this tool, what SketchUp is doing is actually subdividing these surfaces in main small one, so that I can actually visualize more detail. And this will follow, of course, again, all the information that is contained within my point cloud. So here you go. Other important feature is that I can turn this mesh into an actual solid. How to do that? I just select it and I use my tool Make Solid. And here you go. In a few seconds, now my mesh became solid. Of course, I can still edit it. I can add more depth, etc., etc. So why would I want to have this mesh solid? Is because, as I said previously, I would like to add an extension, so a new construction. So for example, I'm gonna draw the perimeter of my new building, for example, which is this one. I know that this building is gonna have some foundation, is gonna have an underground level that it goes down into the soil of approximately 4 meters. So I can type in 4 meter and I create this extrusion. I can also create my entire volume. I make a group. And as we can see, therefore, my new building will go underground of 4 meters. And now we would like to figure out what's the amount of volume of terrain that I will need to remove in the phase of excavation. To do so, we can actually use our solid tools. So if I go and take this palette of solid tools, which is a native palette of SketchUp, here you go, where it is. This is actually in French, but like is our palette of solid tools. I'm going to be using the split functionality that will allow me, therefore, to create an intersection in between the two solids. So the volume of our building that I just created and the volume of my terrain mesh, therefore, to being able to figure out how much meters cube of soil we will need to actually remove. So I clicked on both objects, and in a few seconds, we will see the SketchUp we actually create this intersection. And here you go. SketchUp created my intersection. I can move this model just to show you and to make you understand a little bit better. And here you go. This is actually the amount of terrain that we will need to remove for the excavation. If I select this entity and I go in Entity Info, here we can see the amount of volume in meter cubes that we need to actually remove. So very handy ways of being able to advancing into our modeling process to extract information from our model and to leverage our point cloud. So by keep editing our terrain model, we arrive to have something like that. So we can see that we can start to add information such as textures We can even start to create surfaces, like, for example, for this parking area, create roads. Of course, I can use native tools of SketchUp, such as the sandbox, which are ideal for doing this sort of terrain work and creating roads, etc., etc. And of course, I need to move on to the finalization of the surfaces of my model, and I need to start to add all the existing material to create my existing model more similar to the actual existing site. So I could use the material palette to create the materials and actually apply them on the surfaces of my geometry, following the information from the point cloud. But there's something that is even much handier and more practical, which is this feature that is called Project Point Cloud as a texture, that allows me to actually take all the information, the color information contained inside the point cloud, and project them directly on top of my SketchUp surfaces. Let's see how it works. So I enter inside the group of my house. I select the actual surfaces that I would like to actually apply my textures. So, for example, these surfaces. Then I open the menu, the window of my texture projection from Scan Essential. I can choose the level of detail. So, for example, here I can bump up a little bit the texture detail. I can even choose the type of color that is going to be used to fill the missing information that will be in between the separate points. So fill in the void of information. In this case, I would like to use the average color. And then when I hit on Create Texture, SketchUp, as I said, is taking all the color information from the point cloud and is actually creating textures to be projected directly on top of my model. So here we go. We can see that this has been done. Of course, the more accurately we will model, and the more and the better these textures will be applied onto our model. And also, like, the better quality of point clouds we do have, and the better result of texture we will be able to get. So, and here you go, a very quick way to be able to advance in the modeling over tool to create the existing even in our SketchUp model. So by keep doing that, we will arrive to have something that looks a little bit like this. So here we go, our model. We also edited the textures, changed a little bit the color to make it more realistic. And starting from that, of course, we can even use, again, the AI to be able to create even stunning visuals and prompt whatever is going to be around in the landscape. So AI could also be used as a way to communicate even further the existing and whatever I have. So now let's go back to our slides. Second, here we go. Other little features that I didn't demo, but I would like to mention, is the fact that we can, in the same way that we can create mesh for the terrain, we have a functionality in Scan Essential that allows us to do pretty much the same for vertical surfaces. So as we can see in this GIF, we can actually project a surface on top of like vertical, on top of a point cloud to create therefore this mesh that then can be also made a solid. So this is a very handy feature. For example, if you want to create the exterior of a building that has got a lot of decoration, a lot of 3D relief, and so we can use the feature to avoid to model in detail, but therefore have something that is more similar to the reality in a very quick way. So let's make a recap of what are point clouds used for into a modeling software and into SketchUp. So first thing, point clouds are actually used to model in a very precise way. So by using the point clouds, we are sure that we can increase the accuracy of our model to represent the existing. And also, we're sure to have all the information and all the data in one space, so we can avoid to forget specific construction elements because we've got everything underhand directly inside our SketchUp viewport. Point clouds, they are also used also only for quick measurements as a sort of way, as a sort of site report. So we can, instead of like taking a lot of notes of like on paper, or like going multiple sites on the site to be able to take all these measurements, point clouds, they allows us to have one single site visit and get all this information of measurement, but not only, even as we said, as we've seen, color information. Therefore, we can save time, we can have complete information straight inside of SketchUp, and also we can have safer site studies, where sometimes some points are quite hard to reach. Therefore, with a laser scanner or a LiDAR technology, we can actually have safer site studies. So that means that point clouds, they're very good to use in the case of rehabilitation or of traditional structures, or for example, even design of extensions to these traditional structures. Like for example, in this case, these structures are called trulli. There's some traditional vernacular dry stone structure from south of Italy. They're very beautiful, and nowadays architects, they actually work on the renovation of them. However, as you can imagine, they're super hard to study because they're very irregular. They're traditional structures. There's nothing that is straight. Therefore, the use of point clouds could actually be super handy to have all the different information of each different spot of the exterior, but also of the interior. Also, point clouds, they're used to create the digital twin and to extract, not only to measure, but even to extract dimensioning from this digital twin. So we can see in this case that the architect actually built the new structure around an existing temple in Japan. And then on layout, it is possible also to visualize this point cloud and to therefore trace all this dimensioning directly from the point cloud. So the points of the point cloud, they become snap points even on layout, and therefore we can create technical drawings using even point clouds. So this can help designers to save a lot of time and even not having to redraw from scratch the existing, in case our work will not be about the actual existing structure, but an extension. Of course, point clouds, they're used also for a visualization, visualizing the entire context, even when we don't want to, or we don't have the time to model everything, or modeling everything will be too complex. For example, like in this case, this is like the side of a road, of a long road with a lot of vegetation, trees. So we imported this point cloud into SketchUp only to visualize the context and better understand and giving context to our actual project. And of course, we can use point clouds even for compatibility tests. Perform therefore this test and to see how our design and our integrated addition to the model, if they're going to fit compared to the existing. So using Scan Essential can actually help in reducing and preventing errors. Okay, now let's talk about our Scan Essential case study. Let's see how companies, they actually use Scan Essentials. So in this case, we're going to talk about a project by CBRE, which is a global leader in the commercial real estate services. CBRE, they are a massive international organization that is composed of more than 155 professionals that they operate over 100 countries. So in this case, we will taking the example of the renovation of some offices in their Tokyo, in Tokyo. And we can see from the video on the right that they actually used Spot, which is a robot dog. It's a technology created by the Boston Dynamics. And this robot actually is capable of walking around the entire floor of the office on his own. And on top of it, there is actually a Trimble scanner. And so by doing that, we can see that we are using very high-end technology to be able to create this massive point cloud of the entire space in one go. So, of course, this is a very high-end technology, but that proves how SketchUp is capable of handling huge point clouds that they're created even with this type of technology. So So once the point cloud is being captured, they insert it into SketchUp, and then they converted in the same way that we've seen in the previous demos. They converted this point cloud into the model, as we can see. Of course, they use SketchUp to be able to test ideas, to visualize options and versions, and to be able to communicate in a very efficient way with their clients and stakeholders. As we can see here, different options of the same interior space. They also use point clouds in this very unique way. So they actually created a snapshot, a screenshot from the viewport of SketchUp with a point cloud of the specific armchair. And then they imported the image into the 3D warehouse. They used the 3D warehouse AI image search to be able to find the closest piece of furniture that would correspond to the armchair. And this has been done, of course, to speed up even more the designing process. They knew that they wanted to maintain those armchairs and they didn't want to design them from scratch or waste a lot of time researching them in the 3D warehouse. And therefore, they use this technique of using a screenshot directly from the point cloud. So very creative and interesting way of using point clouds, but very handy. And here you go, some pictures of the final work. Okay, now let's move on to the second section of our webinar, the Revit importer. Before starting and deep diving and understanding how to use it and what it is, I would like to make this sort of like recap of the distinction in between the two different softwares, because they are quite similar, but they actually, their purpose, they serve for two different roles. So Revit, as you may know, it's an excellent software specific designed for the deep data management and construction documentation. On Revit, we can actually draw by using parametrical tools and therefore having a parametrical modeling that it's very helpful for the automate the scheduling. So therefore, all these features, they make Revit the ideal software for technical in-depth development and detailing stages of a project for the construction. Whereas on the other hand, SketchUp is an excellent software and is a very intuitive free-form modeling environment that therefore prioritizes the visual expression and most of all the communication of the ideas of projects with the stakeholders, with the clients, and with all the involved parties. So SketchUp is used for the rapid conceptualization and all the different design iterations. And of course, is used to explore ideas, as I said. And the most important thing is that SketchUp, it's, as I said, a free-form modeling software. Therefore, we are free from being bogged down by rigid database rules and parametrical requirements. We can actually develop the models very freely, following the creativity. So to better make you understand what I just said, here you go, a visual graphic and a visual explanation of the different phases of a typical project development. So from the brief till the building of this project, we can see that users actually do use Revit and SketchUp in a very complementary way to be able to do these two different things. So we can see that SketchUp is used a lot in the initial phases, where we need to develop concepts, design ideas, making the first plans. And once the ideas, they start to be a little bit more redefined, here is where Revit comes in play. Revit is very, as I said, very good for developing deep technical documentation and finalizing constructible ideas. But then SketchUp is also used throughout the end of the project, where, for example, while the project is nearly finished, we still need to, for example, create some iteration, test new ideas to finalize, therefore, the final details. And instead of doing that on Revit, which would actually compromise the structure of the entire Revit file, adding a lot of different versions and a lot of more geometry, we can actually take the Revit model, import it into SketchUp, add our modification, and therefore test all our new ideas, make visualization, and once they're validated, finalizing them in Revit. So now let's jump straight into the demo of the Revit importer to understand exactly what I'm talking about. So here we go back to our SketchUp model, SketchUp UI, sorry. To be able to import a Revit file, there's nothing more simpler than this. We actually take our folder from our computer and we actually slide into SketchUp our Revit file. So first thing to know is that Revit, we can use the Revit importer only on Windows machines as well. And so in this moment, SketchUp is actually converting and reading this model and trying to convert it into SketchUp model. So before the SketchUp importer was actually created, before the Revit importer was actually created, our users were spending hours and hours of work to be able to polish, to organize, and to make more SketchUp friendly the Revit models. But now this tool actually enables us to be able to do that in a few seconds, and therefore saving hours and hours of work. So first thing that we see, we can actually choose to import a specific view of our Revit. That means that by selecting the view, we will be capable of importing only the geometry and the elements of Revit that are visible in this Revit view. We can also choose to tick this import Revit metadata to be able to visualize in a more faithful way the way that the metadata, all the metadata that is included in the Revit file. In this case, I don't need that, so I will just select my view and click continue. We can see that we can also import the different phases of our file in case we created different phases of development for our project on Revit. We're capable of selecting those. We can also select or deselect the import of specific entities. If we forgot to do it in the views, we can actually even do it here. And then just hit import. So as I said, now SketchUp is converting the Revit model into a truly SketchUp file. So we do that, as I said, to be able to continue the work of texturing, so adding texture, working on the materials, and even starting to create our model ready to be used for visualization and communication with the stakeholders, so that the stakeholders they can actually be able to have more informed decision and being sure of the options and the versions that they actually choose to use. Okay, we'll wait another few seconds. And here you go, my Revit importer that imported this model from Revit. So we can see that the model, it's all grouped inside a component. So we can double click inside to start to visualize, enrich all the geometry. And we can see that we can arrive up to the core of this geometry. So all the surfaces, we can click on the lines, we can start to edit things, etc., etc. So this is a real SketchUp model now. Other thing that is important to notice is that all the families of Revit, they're actually converted into components into SketchUp. So if we open the, so just to see that, we can see that this curtain walls panels, there were families on Revit, and therefore now they're components in SketchUp. That means that they're all linked. And if I edit one of them, we can see that all the others will be also edited at the same time. So this is a very practical way of to be able to keep editing and modifying my model for visualization purposes. So as I said, if we open the tags menu, we can also see that the entire structure of my Revit model is being maintained. And all the different geometry, it's grouped and is organized in the same way that it was on my Revit model. That means that we can hide and reveal different parts of my geometry. For example, in this case, I will hide the curtain panels, or maybe I will hide my walls, or in this case, we've got the structure and in general, the foundation. So I can even hide my structural foundation, etc., etc. So this helps me to find all these elements as I set them up on Revit and being able to handle them even in SketchUp. Okay, and the last thing that I would like to show you around the Revit importer is the fact that we also maintain the information about the different levels in SketchUp. So if we take my section native palette of SketchUp, and if we visualize all the section cuts that they're set up, we can see that there's a section cut for each wall, for each floor of my building. So the section cuts there actually came from SketchUp, from Revit. So I can therefore double click on those and see how I can actually visualize my model, directly and the interior directly on SketchUp. So now let's go back to our presentation. I can see we've got a few minutes left. I'll try to wrap it up very quickly. Let's finally talk about the Revit importer, the case study around the Revit importer, and see how companies actually use it. So in this case, we will be talking about a case study from Enya Architects. So Enya Architects is a renowned French multidisciplinary architectural firm that is specialized in innovative and sustainable design solutions. They make a wide range of different projects, as we can see in the slide, including public buildings, commercial spaces, and urban developments. They've got 70 collaborators over two different offices in France and India. So they use the Revit importer and SketchUp. And they've been using SketchUp since before we actually invented the Revit importer. And so before it was available, they actually tested out so many different ways of importing those Revit files into SketchUp for the sake of visualization. So they tried the import of DWG, IFC. They also tried to use some extensions, for example, Helix, Speckle. And they also created this nice table where they actually rank all the pros and all the cons of using all these different applications. And we can see that at the bottom, the Revit importer is so far the best extension that actually facilitates the work and that ticks all their needs and all their requests from this extension. So it saves them a lot of time. Let's see now how they use, therefore, this Revit importer in practice. So the first start, drawing their model into Revit, creating a Revit view, then exporting this Revit view and importing it into SketchUp. And then on SketchUp, they actually move on to the texturing work, and therefore they create and they finalize the textures for the visualization. Other thing that they do, and it's very practical, is actually the import of specific elements of the model. For example, sometimes on the original Revit file, there will be some modifications. So some elements will be modified. And therefore, we've already worked onto our SketchUp. And so we want to integrate only this modification inside SketchUp. So they actually do that by creating a specific view into the Revit file that visualize only the elements that have been modified. And then they import only the specific view into the existing file of SketchUp so that they don't have to start from scratch and remodel everything from zero, but they can keep all the advancement that they've done on the SketchUp file, but they can import the modification, only the modification that have been done on Revit. So this is a very practical workflow. And here we can see how they use SketchUp for the actual visualization. So in Revit, in this case, they had to create an exterior staircase of their building. And drawing and modeling that in Revit would have taken way too long. So what they chose to do is to create a simple cylinder into Revit, then imported this model into SketchUp. And starting from the cylinder, they actually went and added all the details and all the cladding features and the materials on SketchUp so that they could create a visualization, for example, on Twinmotion to communicate the idea. And SketchUp is not only used, as I said, for creating the details, but even to test new ideas without having to compromise the Revit structure of the Revit file structure. So they imported this model into SketchUp. And in SketchUp, they created 3 different versions of the staircase design, the cylindrical one and different one. We can see that they also created visual renders by using Twinmotion. And then all these visuals, they've been presented to the client, which actually chose the last view. So an impactful way to make informed decision. And this brings me to the end of this webinar. We're just a couple of minutes late. Just before ending, I would like to let you know that actually, if you're interested in testing out these features, at the moment, we're making price reductions on the ProScan and Pro Advanced Workflow licenses. So if you're interested in purchasing those, you can actually go to your resellers and ask them about this. They will be able to give you all the essential information. And I would like to thank you for your attention. I will just go and check the questions. Here you go. Maybe I can actually answer to a couple of questions before ending this webinar. So, is there an extension for exporting SketchUp files to Revit? No, at the moment, we don't have a Revit exporter. But what we're doing, we're actually developing an extension for Revit that will be capable of importing SketchUp files directly into Revit. Of course, this is in phase of development. It's a beta feature, but hopefully one day we will be able to produce and public this functionality. I'll take another question. Can I use Scan Essential on Apple? No. As I mentioned, Scan Essential and also the Revit importer, they're features for only Windows. So unfortunately, you cannot use it on Apple. Can SketchUp capture a point cloud, or do I need to use other applications? SketchUp cannot create point clouds itself, but there are a lot of applications that they're capable of doing so. If you're talking about using an iPhone or an iPad Pro, you can download the extension, for example, Scaniverse and Polycam. These are 2, Scaniverse specifically is a free extension as well that allows you to use the LiDAR and to be able to therefore scan the space and create a point cloud. Okay, as we're a little bit over, I see my colleague answered to the majority of the question. So we can end our webinar now. Thank you so much for your attention and for being with us. And I wish to see you in the next webinar, the next quarter. And remember to do the poll, please. The poll will be highly appreciated. Thank you so much. Have a good day.